manage to take our opponent's back, and we're going to look at how to finish strangles on the overhook side. Okay. Now to start the class off, we're going to look at some ways that we can break his grips as well as use hand fighting tactics. So for the first drill, I'm just going to start on my two knees. He's going to start seated, and I'm going to start with one hand underneath and one hand over. Okay, we call this our seat belt usually. You can do it on either side. Just make sure we have one hand under and one hand over. Generally, we always want to cover the top hand, okay? When we understand jiu-jitsu terminology, the top hand, we want to call this the strangle arm or the choking arm. And we usually call this the control hand or the secondary hand. And I always want to try to hide my strangle arm, because if I ever give him control of my actual hand, it's very hard to punch a strangle. If he just gets control of my wrist, there's some stuff I can do that I can get around his defensive hands. So generally, we always want to cover it, and we want to make sure that our hands are by the sternum. Now, my elbow position, I generally want to cover the shoulder, because when I unlock my hands, I should be able to control him without locking. So if he tries to turn to the right, my elbow stops him. If he tries to turn to the left, my forearm stops him here. So you kind of have like these T-Rex arms from here. Now, as always, my opponent's going to take two defensive hands in place, just like so, and hopefully I'm doing a good job of covering my fist. From here, we're going to do a trilemma. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 different grip breaks depending on what he does. From here, my secondary hand is going to take top hand position. So I'm going to grab on top of his hand. From here, I'm going to roll my pinky up so that I can expose his pinky line. And from here, I dig my fingers right underneath, I peel, and strip. As soon as I strip, I get in the habit of punching my arm across and punching his hand down, just like so. And from here, the drill will reset. I start with my seatbelt. I come top hand position, I expose, 1, and punch. The second part is, let's say he turns his hand down to defend the pinky grab. Now when I say pinky, don't grab the pinky, grab where the pinky line is, right here. He turns his hand down to defend. I use the heel of my hand at the thumb line, and I peel it off. And this time, instead of punching down, I punch away and up. And now it makes it very easy to punch across. So from here, he defends the pinky, he exposes his thumb, I pull away. Now in the event that he defends the pinky, he defends the thumb, we use the screwdriver method, where I just hold his hand, and I lift my elbow and pull it. Lift and pull, lift and pull, lift and pull, until my hand is free, and now I can come through and wrap around his neck. Okay, so we'll start with our partner, and I want you to run through all 3 scenarios. I have my seatbelt, I get top hand position, I expose the pinky line for 1, punch. He defends the pinky line, I go thumb line, punch. And he defends both, he's doing a good job, so I just go elbow up, elbow down, until I can punch. And each time you'll notice that after I strip the grip, I'm pulling it down to his belly so that he only has one hand to defend, and I can easily access his neck as deep as I can. Okay, we'll look at what happens if he catches in a bit, but for now I get deep and I cover. Okay, let's give that first drill a shot. 3, 2, 1. And your partner. Most important thing once we take someone's back. Okay, so now, once we strip someone's grip, okay, 3 things can happen. 1, he doesn't do anything, right? He's a brand new guy, and he gives us free access to his neck. Option 2, he catches our wrist in the process, making it our wrist. Nope. Okay, which is annoying to deal with, but it doesn't actually control my hand, so I can always punch across the center line and wrap. And response 3, which is the best one, is to actually find my hand. If he grabs my hand, it's very hard to overcome this. Okay, we'll look at how to do that in a second, but if he catches my hand, he can now pull my hand back to center, roll his wrist free, and come back to getting his defensive hands in place and start going into all of his escapes. Okay, so first let's look at situation 1. Turn towards the Fuji sign. Okay, so situation 1, he does nothing. So whichever grip fight I did, pinky, thumb line, etc., he doesn't really do much, and he gives me free access to his neck. Now there's 2 ways we can do this, and it'll depend on the length of your arms. If you have long arms, you want to grab behind his shoulder and cover your hand always. If you have shorter hands, we do what's called a gooseneck, which is where I make a fist and I cover the back of his neck, and I also cover my hand like so. Now, I want you guys to remember this concept. There needs to always be something covering my hand, okay? And I'll show you what I mean. Once I cover my hand with my own head, I'm now going to pull my elbow up and then extract my hand. A common mistake I see that people make is they leave their hand down here, and as I go to extract, he can now bring his hand and find my hand before I can get to it. He has a shorter path to my hand. Now, of course, if he's experienced, he'll know this. So what I want to do is I want to shorten that space. I lift my elbow, and now in slow motion, when I extract, I have a shorter distance to travel. And now my hand covers my hand. Then my wrist covers my wrist. Then my bicep covers my hand. And so at no point did he have access to my hand. Oftentimes in a beginner's class, I see people extract and they like stick their hand out here. If you do that, right, he's just going to pull it, my hand. And now it's going to be hard to finish. Now he can find my secondary hand and go here. Okay, so I never want to present my hand. And the way we avoid this is by lifting at the elbow, pulling, hand over hand, wrist over hand, bicep over hand. Now, one key detail. Once we're on the, right now it doesn't matter, but when we're on the ground and I extract, I want to round my spine. If my spine is flat, it's going to be hard to get my hands where I want. So as I bring my hand to my own chin, I round, okay, it's called concave shoulders, and now I have easy access to my own shoulder. And you'll notice how high both of my hands are. Right, like I said, when I'm on the knees, it doesn't matter. And when I'm actually fighting someone and my chest is flat, it's very weird to get all the way through. But when I round, I have an easy punch. And at no point did I give him the space that he wants. And now from here, let's look at how to actually finish. Once we have the figure of four, we don't just want to squeeze. Okay, if I squeeze, okay, it requires big biceps, which I don't have. So instead, I want to focus on rotating my elbow towards my hip so I can apply what's called rotational force. And just like so, I'm able to make myself stronger. And like with any submission, we never squeeze super hard. We start gradually and we increase our pressure so that we don't blow out our arms. Because in the event that maybe he tucks his jaw and he's here and I squeeze too fast, I risk losing the move. So I gradually increase my pressure, and little by little, I get a finish. Okay, so again, start with your partner. He won't defend. You'll practice covering your hand, either behind the shoulder or the gooseneck method. You'll lift the elbow, extract, hand over hand, wrist over hand, bicep. And then you'll practice rotating through for the finish. Okay, let's give that a shot. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay, so now let's look at situation 2. Okay, so situation 1 was he just gives us a free access to his neck. Okay, you can catch people like that, but usually someone's going to put up a bigger fight. So situation 2, after I strip, is he captures my wrist. Now, if I try to just go directly to the neck, strong, I'll never have access to him. Now, because he has control of my wrist, he has some control of my hand, but what he doesn't have control over is my elbow. So I can always line up my elbow with his center line. And the way I do this, okay, is I do what's called finger walking, okay? I walk my fingers across his body. I don't try to walk up because his force is pulling me down. If I try to walk up, I'll never win. But when I, go ahead, strong. When I walk across his body, I can always accomplish this. Now, how far do we walk? I walk as far as I need to get my elbow directly in this line of his nose here. Now, once I can accomplish this, I'm going to make a switch, okay? I'm actually going to now start extracting my hand, but I'm going to punch his hand away, like so. Okay, and I go over the top of the hand, and I'm able to punch and get my other hand deeper. And now same thing is I immediately go to cover. Now because let go of the other hand, expect this hand to come up and try to find your hand. If he tries to find my hand and he successfully does, I just repeat the process and I find his hand and I keep going and do it again. And I can keep this process going as long as I'm either goosenecked or I'm grabbing his shoulder here. So again, he finds my hand, or I'm sorry, my wrist. We finger walk. Now once I finger walk, I repeat that elbow lift. I extract, punch, and cover. If at any point he finds my hand again, I just keep pushing away and I keep hand fighting. Go ahead. And eventually I can punch a full figure of 4 and go get the finish from here. Okay? So this time the exact same thing, except now off of the grip break, he grabs my wrist and he's trying to actively pull everything down. So I just finger walk till I can get to his tricep. Okay, that's a good cue. Now from here I can extract, lift, and punch my strangle. Alright? And don't forget, when we're punching, I'm rounding my shoulders, but once I lock, I'm extending my shoulders back so that I can get good pressure here on his neck. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Get the initial strip, but this time I have a smart defensive hand fighter and he grabs my thumb or hand line. So now when I try to punch up, I'll never win this battle. When I try to finger walk, I can't finger walk. He has complete control of my arm because he's grabbing at the longest end of the lever. Okay, he's got full control. So whenever this happens, we want to make his grip weaker, okay, by getting his hands higher than he wants them. Now, it's going to be a little bit harder than the last two, so a lot of key details, so make sure we're watching. I'm going to release his primary defensive hand, and I'm going to grab his secondary wrist. When I grab this wrist, I want to jack his hands above his chest line. Okay, so, sorry YouTube, right above the nipple line. Okay, that's where I want to go. So I grab his wrist and I go right above the nipples. From here, because his other hand is free, he's going to bring it and use it defensively against my strangle hand. No problem. Now, because I walked his hand high, his elbow position is compromised. So when he tries to push my hand down, he won't be able to. The only way his primary hand is going to be effective is if it's at his center line or further. So if it's hands here, stop me from strangling him. Ready? He'll always win. When I go, now grab, and his hand is this high, doesn't matter. Okay? That's what we want. Do you guys see that? Let's look at it again. So we're here. Wait. I strip. He grabs my hand. Okay? Immediately I release and go over the top of his wrist, and I shrug my shoulders and pull my hands up. And I know what's going to happen. His hand is free, so I can start stripping this hand, and his other hand will come and replace it. Now, watch what happens. His hand is too high. Try to stop me. I can always punch inside. And now we repeat the same process. Because that hand is free, I know where that hand's coming. So I want to make sure I either cover my hand, or if he does find my hand, we go back to punching the hand down. And as we're punching, he might bring the second one back. And we're punching till we can punch our full hands and lock them in. Okay? Again, look at both my fingertips are on my shoulders here. Okay? I'm in a great spot, extending my chest. Okay? I call it the proud girl at the bar. Is I just show my chest, try to get some free drinks, and I squeeze. Okay? So again, got a seatbelt. I break, he finds my hand. I try to go across, but he's got control of my hands. So I get to the wrist and I jack it up. As I'm doing this, I'm stripping, and he defends with his other hand now. If he grabs the way he's grabbing, he'll never win. He's got to try to sneak his thumb inside. But even then, it's not enough. And now I punch and lock. And just like that, we have a response to all three scenarios when we're hand fighting from the back on the overhook side. Okay? 3, 2, 1. I wasn't like, now let's look at how it will look in a practical situation. Okay? Now we're going to have our hooks, and we're going to be on the overhook side. Okay? So what is the overhook side? It's the hand that's on top. We're going to be on our side. Now, the biggest issue I see when people get on the overhook side is their head position. in order for me to effectively strangle someone, my head needs to always be on the opposite side of my elbow. It's easy to get lazy here and let your head drop to the floor. When this happens, it's very hard to actually lock my hands and get to an effective strangle from here. So one, I want to make sure that I'm active with my head position, like so. And now all the same concepts apply from hand fighting. Pinky, thumb, elbow extraction, whatever the case may be. I punch, and now we can play the same exact scenarios. I get to here and get to everything the same. Okay, so one is head position. And the final thing is each time I break this grip, if I can ever trap his arm with my leg, this will make it even easier to strangle someone. So now let's look at how to arm trap. So whichever grip break we did, I want to get in the habit of, as I punch his arm down, I'm thinking about getting my knee above his elbow. Now, if you're able to capture his hand, we lock our two legs first before we let go with our hand. Only once I've captured my two ankles do I extract my own hand. And now you guys see how easy it'll be. He tries to hand fight, like, oh man, no way. He's not going anywhere at this point. Okay? Now, because we're in no-gi, sometimes the match will get slippery and he'll be able to free his arm. Now, because I have my hand inside, I can control the rate at which he frees his hand. Try to free your hand. So we're going to go on my turn. So keep trying. Whenever I'm ready, I get to my strangle. You see? So we play this game of constantly hand fighting, and trapping. And just like that, we brought everything back together. Now all of the rules will stay the same. Okay? We try the pinky, the thumb, the elbow. Then from there, as soon as we get a grip break, we know the three situations. No reaction, wrist reaction, hand reaction, and finally, this whole time we're trying to trap. If my feet are above his hips, he can't really footlock me. When my feet are down here, he can potentially footlock me. Okay, it's not high percentage. It can work, don't get me wrong, but there's an easy way to avoid this. If he ever locks his feet over my ankles and he starts to footlock me, I just release and I push his head. Now when he tries to footlock me, and now I can start taking my ankles out and resetting the system here. Because in order for him to break my legs, his head has to travel backwards and his hips forward. If I can just stop one of the two, really try to break, he'll never break me. I'd give him my wallet, which I don't have. But if I did, I'd give it to him. And as I'm pushing, I'm freeing. Now if you have Gumby feet, and let's say you do get stuck here, I don't have Gumby feet, but he could try and you'd be fine. But better safe than sorry is push, free your ankles, and keep them locked above the hip. And now if I am able to get to an arm trap, look how high my legs are. And notice the leg that's trapping is on bottom and the leg that's reinforces is on top. Because if you were to uppercut, he can't. If my legs were the opposite way, the uppercut can separate my legs. Okay? Good questions. Let's give that a shot. 3, 2, 1.